Welcome to JGTCR, I'm Cope, and today we are tuning the Audi R8 LMS 15. Let's get into it. Ordinarily, I would say that this is a modern race car, so it handles reasonably well out of the box. But this is not something that can be easily said about this Audi R8. There are many caveats we must conform to if we wish to drive the LMS quickly, so it would be fair to say that this is an advanced level race car. To begin with, it is an extremely tail-happy race car, and not in a good way. It will start drifting on a whim, and if not corrected immediately, will continue spinning right the way around or snap back quite violently. The higher the RPM is, the more likely this event is to occur. To prevent this from happening, we must drive this Audi at low RPM to keep it from losing traction. This ends up feeling like we're holding back. And we know what we like to say about that around these here parts. That just ain't racing. To gain any ground while driving this vehicle, we must find a happy medium. Low RPM, carefully curated throttle modulation through turns, and balls to the wall wide open throttle on the straightaways. This may sound simple in theory, but if we have an itchy trigger finger when it comes to the throttle, it is far more difficult than it sounds. The power delivery itself is not too aggressive. It's just that the chassis does not like to grip. It does take a while to get through the rev range, so the engine does feel lazy, adding to the misconception we need to push harder. The handling is decent if we are cautious on inputs. The brakes are reasonable, but the R8 gets wobbly and wrigglies, believe it or not, under heavy braking. Again, this appears to be a chassis-based dilemma. Let's jump ahead and collect our time. 6 minutes 28.1 seconds. Let's take a look at the tune. Given what we experienced driving the factory vehicle, our focus was to get this R8 LMS to be stable while driving. We achieved this via stiffening of the suspension, leaving the rear slightly softer than the front in natural frequency. Our differential settings were maxed in both initial torque and acceleration sensitivity. However, braking sensitivity was reduced to 40 points due to the tail end stepping out under braking. And of course, we used a whole load of downforce to keep the vehicle pinned to the road. Let's head back out to the Nürburgring. The improvements to this Audi R8 through tuning are vast. Yes, it is faster due to the larger turbo, and it handles better because of the racing soft tyres. However, the all-round increase in stability is very much thanks to our settings. We now have much more freedom of expression in our driving style. We are no longer bound by the rules and regulations imposed upon us by this Audi R8, and that in itself counts as a win. The LMS is now far more forgiving of our mistakes and does not punish us as harshly as it once did. So we can now brake, turn in, and accelerate far more aggressively than we could before. The power delivery is more aggressive, but it does still take a long time to get through the rev range and drone on. The handling is sharp and crisp, but we can still find understeer and oversteer depending on how we drive. Our braking is also much improved, and it's much harder to find the wriggle zone under heavy braking. Let's jump ahead and collect our time. 6 minutes 14.1 seconds. And now the drift tune. Our drift tune for the R8 sees us running no turbo. This is due to the power delivery being far too aggressive. And even without the turbo, the power delivery is still a touch far too aggressive. And for this reason, we have had to Frankenstein this tune to make this Audi drift. Our differential settings sees initial torque at 60, but acceleration and braking sensitivity have both been reduced to 10 points. We also ran the maximum ballast of 200 kilos at a ballast positioning of -25 over the front wheels. This is to stabilize the front end and give us more of a pendulum effect when drifting. Let's drift Suzuka. There are two things that have been made relatively clear in the drift section of these videos. The first is that modern race chassis do not lend themselves well to drift on GT7. The second is that the Audi R8 chassis in particular does not like to drift. So with their powers combined, the LMS 15 is not a great drift car. The extremities we had to go to get this vehicle to drift are the very same reason why it performs so poorly. The soft suspension and roll bars save us from spinning out. However, they also make for sloppy transitions and erratic movements when we are adjusting our speed, line and angle. The extra weight over the front wheels prevents the vehicle from being snappy tom. However, it does increase the likelihood of understeer. So ultimately, we are exchanging one poor trait for another. The only redeemable quality of this R8 is that it's mid-mount rear-wheel drive as opposed to four-wheel drive. But even that can't save it from the relatively poor driving experience while drifting it. The Audi R8 LMS 15 is an advanced driver's race car. In factory trim, it takes a greater degree of skill, patience and self-control to drive this Audi effectively and fast. And the punishment for not driving appropriately can be brutal. When completely modified and tuned, many of these quirks are dulled out. However, they are still present. But if we are adaptable in our racecraft, we can settle into a decent groove. And in the drift arena, as far as all R8 chassis go, they are better left at home. While they are capable, they certainly are not comfortable. And that's all we have for you today, so until next time, keep racing!